You're listening to an exclusive production from Valio. When Money Controls the Soul, Chapter 1. Recognizing the Chains, Awareness Before Freedom. There is a quiet weight that settles over your life, one that is often invisible until you confront it. It moves like a shadow, threading itself into decisions, relationships, and even the thoughts you barely notice. This weight is not physical. It cannot be measured in pounds or inches, yet it shapes the trajectory of your life more than you realize. It is the silent command of money over your choices, a subtle dominance that few admit and fewer still understand. Recognizing it is the first necessary step toward reclaiming your freedom. At first, the chains are almost imperceptible. You tell yourself that your habits, your fears, your ambitions are rational, that they make sense. You budget, you save, you plan. And yet there is a lingering tension, a feeling that something, somewhere, is not entirely yours to command. You may notice it in fleeting moments. The hesitation before making a purchase, the anxiety when a bill is due, the resentment when wealth, or the lack of it, dictates who can or cannot enter your life. This tension is not your imagination. It is the proof of invisible attachments you have allowed to take root. These chains manifest in countless ways. Perhaps you work longer hours than you enjoy, sacrificing time, energy, and creativity for the promise of security. Perhaps you avoid opportunities, relationships, or risks because the potential financial cost feels too threatening. Perhaps you hoard resources, convinced that accumulation is safety, while a quiet fear gnaws at your mind. The subtle truth is that money is not merely a tool in your life. It has, in many moments, become the master of it. Awareness begins with observation. Begin by noticing the small, seemingly insignificant moments when money exerts influence over your behavior. Pay attention to the decisions you make in silence, the compromises you accept without argument, the choices you avoid out of caution or fear. These are not failures, they are signals. Each hesitation, each anxious thought, each deferred dream is a thread in the web that has quietly bound your autonomy. Recognizing these threads is not an act of guilt. It is an act of liberation. Fear is often at the heart of these invisible chains. Fear of loss, fear of scarcity, fear of judgment. It is a quiet, persuasive force, convincing you that caution is wisdom, that restraint is prudence, that waiting is survival. And yet, the irony is that fear itself can be more imprisoning than any financial circumstance. It is the force that keeps you tethered to habits, patterns, and beliefs that serve neither your growth nor your freedom. Begin by asking yourself the questions that feel uncomfortable. When did money begin to dictate your life more than your intentions? Or have you compromised your desires in the name of financial safety? What choices have you deferred, postponed, or abandoned because of invisible pressure? The answers may feel unsettling, even shameful, but they are necessary. In naming these influences, you pull them into the light, and only then can you begin to loosen their grip. It is equally important to examine the emotional exchanges you have with money. Are your feelings dominated by anxiety, guilt, or obsession? Do you feel relief and pride when you accumulate, yet a quiet unease that never fully dissipates? Do you measure your self-worth by your net worth, your security, or your ability to control resources? These patterns are rarely discussed openly, yet they are woven into the fabric of everyday life. Understanding them is not indulgence, it is clarity. Control, in its purest form, begins with honest observation. You do not need to fix everything at once. You only need to see the mechanisms at work. Notice the subtle ways that money dictates your daily rhythm. Notice how your energy shifts when a paycheck is delayed, a bill arrives, or a purchase exceeds your plan. Notice the silent calculations in your mind when opportunity presents itself, filtered through risk, fear, and self-protection. Each observation is a small act of reclaiming autonomy. Freedom is not the absence of money's influence. It is mastery over it. It is understanding where attachment begins, where fear masquerades as prudence, and where habit has quietly become constraint. Recognizing the chains does not require judgment. It requires presence. It requires the courage to watch yourself without excuse, to trace the origins of patterns, and to name the ways your choices have been influenced. There is also a hidden gift in this process. Awareness of control brings perspective. You begin to see that the power of money over your life is not absolute. It is conditional, shaped by habits, beliefs, and emotional responses. Once these elements are visible, they can be addressed. You begin to understand that your relationship with money is, in essence, a reflection of your relationship with yourself, your confidence, your fears, your values, and your intentions. This process is neither quick nor comfortable. It will require patience, persistence, and honesty. You may feel resistance, even anger, as you confront how much influence has been ceded without conscious consent. You may feel grief for the moments lost or compromised. These emotions are not obstacles. They are proof that your awareness is awakening. To feel deeply is a sign of life fully engaged, a signal that you are ready to reclaim authority over your choices. Begin small. Identify one decision, one habit, one thought pattern where money has been the unseen authority. Observe it without judgment. Ask yourself, what am I feeling in this moment? What am I prioritizing? What fear or desire is shaping this choice? Over time, these small acts of recognition accumulate. They form a foundation, solid enough to support more deliberate, conscious decisions. Each insight dismantles a link in the chain, freeing space for clarity, intentionality, and empowered action. Recognizing the chains is also a practice in self-compassion. It is not about blaming yourself for surrendering to pressure or fear. It is about seeing clearly, naming honestly, and deciding deliberately. The chains are not a reflection of weakness. They are a reflection of life's complexity and the unconscious ways we protect ourselves. In recognizing them, you honor your intelligence, your capacity for insight, and your desire for freedom. As awareness deepens, you begin to understand a fundamental truth. The chains are only as strong as the belief that they must control you. Power is never absolute. It is conferred. Each moment you observe, each insight you claim, each fear you name chips away at their authority. The invisible becomes visible, the unconscious becomes conscious, and the weight begins to lift. By the end of this awareness, a subtle transformation occurs. You feel a sense of clarity where there was confusion. You sense possibility where there was constraint. You recognize that freedom is not a distant goal, but a state that begins the moment you see the mechanisms at work. In that recognition lies the first taste of liberation, the first opening to a life guided not by invisible chains, but by conscious choice. Reclaiming control begins with recognition. It begins with the quiet, unwavering act of looking inward and seeing the ways money has exerted influence over your life. It begins with naming fear, noticing attachment, and tracing patterns without judgment. It begins with the courage to observe yourself fully and honestly, and to realize that the power to change has always been within reach. Take a deep breath and acknowledge this. The chains exist, but you are not bound beyond recognition. You have the capacity to see, to understand, and to act. This moment of awareness is the first true act of freedom, the initial step in a journey that will transform your relationship with money, with choice, and with yourself. In recognizing the chains, you have already begun to loosen them. And in that loosening, you open the door to a life where your decisions are your own, where your actions are guided by purpose rather than fear, and where true freedom is no longer an abstract idea, but a lived reality waiting for you to claim it. Chapter 2. The Seduction of Security. Understanding the emotional pull of money. There is a subtle magnetism to security, a pull that is almost impossible to resist. It whispers to you in quiet moments, promising comfort, safety, and stability. It tells you that if you accumulate enough, if you save, if you invest wisely, the uncertainty of life will bend to your control. And at first, this promise feels rational, even necessary. There is nothing wrong with seeking safety. Yet in the pursuit of security, many find themselves unconsciously surrendering freedom, tethered not by physical chains, but by the weight of invisible obligation and fear. Security is seductive because it feels tangible. You can measure it, see it, touch it in the form of a bank balance, a paycheck, a house, or a retirement fund. It reassures you, giving the illusion that life is predictable, manageable, and safe. And when life is unpredictable, and it always is, security becomes a soothing balm, convincing you that control is possible if only you hold tightly enough to the resources in your grasp. The more you cling, the more powerful the feeling of security becomes, and the more it begins to dictate your decisions, often without your conscious awareness. Observe the moments when this seduction exerts its influence. Perhaps you refuse to take a chance on a new opportunity because the old routine feels safer. Perhaps you stay in a role that drains your energy because the certainty of income outweighs the possibility of fulfillment. Perhaps you hold on to possessions, ideas, or relationships because letting go feels risky. Each of these choices, while seemingly rational, reflects the silent domination of security over your life. The pull is subtle, often mistaken for prudence, but it quietly narrows the possibilities available to you. The emotional weight of security is often misunderstood. It is not merely a desire for comfort. It is a response to fear. Fear of loss, fear of scarcity, fear of the unknown. And it is a clever illusionist, presenting itself as wisdom and protection. You may find yourself defending habits or beliefs that feel limiting, yet rationalizing them as necessary for your safety. The paradox is that in seeking to preserve safety, you sometimes surrender the very freedom you hope to protect. Security also seduces through comparison. You look around and measure your holdings, your income, your lifestyle against others. If you perceive yourself as lacking, anxiety creeps in. You measure, calculate, and plan with ever greater intensity, hoping to close the gap, hoping to attain the comfort that seems just beyond reach. The energy of comparison feeds the attachment to security, reinforcing the belief that more is necessary, that enough is never truly enough. In this cycle, security transforms from a tool into a master, quietly shaping your priorities, ambitions, and even your sense of self-worth. At the same time, security offers a false promise, the illusion of permanence. You may feel that if you save enough, invest enough, or plan meticulously, life can be controlled. And yet, life is inherently unpredictable. Circumstances change, opportunities arise or vanish, and external events often defy calculation. Security cannot protect against uncertainty. The seduction lies in its suggestion that it can, and in the comfort this illusion brings. Recognizing the gap between the promise of security and its reality is essential to reclaiming autonomy. This awareness does not mean abandoning caution or responsibility. It does not mean ignoring bills, debts, or obligations. It means observing where your desire for safety begins to shape choices unconsciously. Notice the moments when fear of scarcity dominates a decision. Notice when the comfort of the familiar outweighs curiosity or opportunity. Notice when accumulation and preservation replace purpose and freedom. These patterns are subtle, but they are powerful, shaping the trajectory of your life in ways that may not be immediately apparent. Security often disguises itself as identity. You may feel that your wealth, savings, or resources define your value or your legitimacy. You may believe that control over money is synonymous with control over life itself. These beliefs tighten the grip of security, making it feel essential to your sense of self. And the truth is, this is where the seduction becomes dangerous. When what begins as a reasonable desire transforms into a controlling force, dictating not only choices but the emotional lens through which you view your life. To begin loosening security's hold, cultivate observation without judgment. When you notice a decision motivated by the promise of safety rather than genuine desire, pause. Ask yourself, am I acting from possibility or fear? Am I choosing this path because it aligns with my purpose, or because it feels least risky? What is the cost of staying tethered to this illusion? Awareness is the first step in reclaiming choice, the first act of liberation in a relationship that has quietly dominated your life. The seduction of security is also an invitation to reflection. It asks you to examine what truly matters. Are you seeking comfort at the expense of fulfillment? Are you preserving stability at the cost of growth? Are you allowing fear of scarcity to guide decisions that should be inspired by desire, passion, or intuition? These questions may feel unsettling, but they are essential. By confronting them, you open the door to conscious choice, freeing yourself from the unconscious obedience to safety. There is a subtle power in distinguishing between genuine prudence and seduction. Prudence is deliberate, it serves a purpose. Seduction is covert, it serves the illusion of safety. Prudence is flexible, it adapts to changing circumstances. Seduction is rigid, it resists change, fearing loss above all else. By learning to tell the difference, you reclaim authority over your decisions. You learn to honor responsibility without surrendering freedom, to respect preparation without succumbing to obsession, to acknowledge risk without being paralyzed by it. You may also notice the emotional responses tied to security. Relief, satisfaction, and comfort accompany accumulation and preservation. Anxiety, restlessness, and tension accompany perceived scarcity or instability. These emotions are indicators, signals that your relationship with security is active, influencing your decisions and shaping your priorities. By observing these responses, you gain insight into the ways in which safety has become seductive and begin to redirect your energy toward intentional, purpose-driven action. The key to liberation lies not in rejecting security but in reclaiming perspective. Security is a tool, not a master. It is a means to an end, not the end itself. When approached consciously, it supports freedom rather than constrains it. By cultivating awareness, observing patterns, and reflecting on emotional triggers, you transform security from a seductive force into a servant of choice, a structure that supports rather than dictates your life. Ultimately, freedom emerges when you no longer allow fear to masquerade as prudence. It appears when you recognize that life is unpredictable, that resources are finite, and that control is never absolute. But intention, awareness, and clarity are always within reach. Security then becomes what it should be: a supportive presence, a foundation from which to act rather than a cage that constrains. This transformation requires patience. The pull of security is strong, shaped by years of habit, conditioning, and survival instinct. It will whisper, tempt, and resist change. And yet, each moment you observe its influence, question its authority, and align your actions with conscious intention, the hold loosens. The chains are not broken in a single moment but unravel through consistent awareness and deliberate action. By the end of this reflection, you begin to see that the pursuit of security is not inherently wrong. It is how it has come to control you that matters. Awareness transforms the dynamic from silent surrender to conscious choice. You may still seek comfort, safety, and stability, but now you do so from a place of empowerment, not fear. You begin to understand that true liberation is not found in accumulation, but in mastery. Mastery over the emotions, habits, and attachments that previously gave security its power. As this chapter closes, allow yourself to feel the subtle shift that awareness brings. Recognize the quiet seduction that has influenced your choices, and honor the courage it takes to confront it. With each insight, each moment of observation, you reclaim a measure of freedom. You step closer to a life where security serves you rather than rules you, and where money, fear, and desire no longer compete to define your path. In the presence of awareness, the seduction of security loses its dominion. It becomes a tool, a guide, a structure that supports the life you choose to create. And in that space, you begin to experience a new kind of freedom, one rooted not in accumulation but in clarity, intentionality, and conscious command over your choices. Chapter 3. Fear as the hidden master: how anxiety dictates decisions. Fear is one of the most powerful forces in human life. It is subtle, pervasive, and convincing, often appearing as rational caution or careful planning. Fear speaks in whispers at first, and over time it can grow into a commanding voice, dictating choices, shaping behavior, and quietly setting the boundaries of your life. Its influence is rarely acknowledged because it masquerades as prudence, reason, or even responsibility. Yet in the shadows, fear quietly rules, shaping your relationship with money, opportunity, and personal freedom. Notice the moments when fear guides you without permission. Perhaps you hesitate before investing in an opportunity that excites you, convinced the risk is too great. Perhaps you stay in a job that drains your energy because stepping out feels unsafe. Perhaps you withhold generosity, thinking scarcity might follow, even when you have more than enough. Each of these decisions, small or large, carries the subtle signature of fear. Fear is not always loud. Often it is silent, weaving its influence into your habits and routines until the grip feels almost natural. Fear is insidious because it appeals to the part of you that wants to survive, to protect, and to control uncertainty. It convinces you that caution is wisdom, hesitation is prudence, and avoidance is responsibility. In reality, fear often does the opposite. It limits growth, constrains opportunity, and traps you in patterns that serve only the illusion of safety. It thrives in uncertainty, yet it disguises itself as a guide through uncertainty, making you believe that submission to its counsel is necessary for survival. Emotional patterns are the first sign of fear's mastery. Anxiety often rises without clear reason. Tension tightens your chest, thoughts loop endlessly, and a quiet dread follows you through decisions, large and small. Fear often manifests in overanalysis, obsessive planning, or avoidance. It disguises itself in logic and strategy, giving the illusion that you are acting with purpose, while in truth, your actions are dictated by the need to feel safe, to avoid loss, to prevent discomfort. Recognizing fear's role in your life requires brutal honesty. Ask yourself, how often have I deferred a choice out of worry? How often have I stayed in a situation because it felt safer than the unknown? How often have I measured my value or success against my ability to avoid loss rather than my capacity to pursue growth? These questions are uncomfortable because they confront patterns that have been normalized, yet they are essential. Awareness is the doorway to change. Fear also wields control by shaping your narrative. It frames scarcity as reality, abundance as unlikely, and risk as catastrophic. It encourages you to seek external validation for your decisions, to measure every move against potential judgment or failure. In doing so, fear steals the autonomy that is inherent to conscious choice. When anxiety is allowed to dominate, your actions are no longer guided by purpose, but by the quiet tyranny of what could go wrong. Consider the impact of fear on your finances. Anxiety can dictate saving, spending, and investing in ways that are disproportionate to reality. You may hoard resources, afraid that tomorrow will bring need that you cannot meet. You may avoid opportunities for growth, convinced that security is worth the cost of stagnation. You may overwork, underrest, and overthink, sacrificing the quality of life for the perceived promise of protection. Fear convinces you that these behaviors are rational, even responsible, when in fact they are the very chains you must recognize and release. Breaking free from fear requires both courage and strategy. It begins with noticing the subtle ways it shapes your decisions. Observe your emotional responses, the tension in your body when considering change, the mental loops that replay potential failure, the hesitation that halts action. These responses are signals, not commands. You are not obligated to obey fear. Observation alone begins to diminish its control. The next step is reframing. Recognize that fear is a messenger, not a ruler. It signals where attachment, uncertainty, or vulnerability exists, but it does not dictate action. When you shift your perspective, fear becomes informative rather than controlling. You can honor its presence without granting it authority. You can acknowledge the anxiety surrounding a choice while still moving forward, guided by intention rather than apprehension. Empowered action requires a deliberate pause. Before reacting to fear, take a moment to center yourself, breathe, and ask, what is my intention in this choice? What do I truly value? What is the worst-case scenario, and how would I respond if it occurred? By separating the emotional surge from the decision-making process, you reclaim autonomy. Fear remains, but it no longer dictates the outcome. You act consciously, with awareness, rather than react unconsciously under the sway of anxiety. Fear also thrives in secrecy and avoidance. When you deny its existence, pretend it does not influence your choices, or rationalize behaviors as necessary protection, you give it power. Transparency with yourself is essential. Name the fears openly, identify the situations they affect, and trace their origins. Often, you will find that fear is amplified by past experiences, cultural conditioning, or deeply ingrained beliefs about scarcity, success, and worth. Naming these forces diminishes their unconscious influence. One of the most profound lessons is that courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act despite it. You may feel anxiety, tension, or doubt, and still choose a path aligned with purpose, growth, or fulfillment. This is mastery over fear. Each conscious step taken in defiance of unseen influence strengthens your autonomy and expands the possibilities available to you. Mastery is cultivated gradually, through consistent observation, reflection, and deliberate action. Financial mastery mirrors this principle. Instead of allowing anxiety to dictate spending or saving, cultivate intentionality. Align each decision with your values and long-term objectives, not with the impulses born of apprehension. Recognize that money is a tool, not a measure of safety or worth. By reclaiming authority over how it is used, fear loses its leverage. Decisions become conscious, deliberate, and empowering rather than reactive and controlling. Fear often carries a paradox. It promises protection but delivers limitation. The more you obey it, the narrower your world becomes. Opportunities are declined, dreams postponed, and potential unrealized. The more you observe it, name it, and act in spite of it, the wider your world expands. You begin to realize that uncertainty is not the enemy, and that true security comes not from avoidance, but from confidence in your ability to navigate challenges consciously and effectively. Emotional regulation is a crucial skill in this process. Fear, when left unchecked, hijacks reasoning, distorts perception, and triggers reactive behaviors. By cultivating awareness of bodily sensations, thoughts, and impulses, you learn to step back before reacting. You create a space between stimulus and response, allowing clarity to guide your actions. Anxiety is still present, but it no longer commands the ship. You steer deliberately through the currents that once threatened to pull you off course. Another key element is perspective. Fear tends to magnify potential negatives while minimizing possibility and growth. By practicing reflection and honest evaluation, you balance perception. Ask yourself, what is the realistic outcome? What resources do I possess to navigate challenge? What are the long-term implications of action or inaction? Through measured reflection, fear becomes a signal rather than a sentence, a tool for discernment rather than a prison wall. The journey to mastery over fear is ongoing. It is not a single moment of bravery, but a continuous practice of observation, reflection, and action. You will encounter old habits, familiar anxieties, and moments when the old patterns attempt to regain control. Each time you notice, pause, and choose consciously, you reinforce the boundary between fear and decision. Over time, this boundary strengthens, allowing greater freedom, clarity, and confidence to emerge naturally. As you begin to reclaim authority over fear, you notice subtle shifts. Decisions once deferred are now approached with intention. Opportunities once dismissed are now considered with curiosity. Anxiety no longer dominates your inner life. It becomes a tool for insight, guiding reflection rather than constraining action. You start to recognize that mastery is not control over life's uncertainties, but control over your response to them. The hidden master loses its authority when illuminated by awareness. Fear, once the silent ruler of your choices, becomes an acknowledged companion. It signals where attention is needed, yet does not dictate direction. You act deliberately, guided by values and purpose rather than impulses born of anxiety. In doing so, you reclaim the power that was always yours, stepping fully into the life you intend to create rather than the life fear would enforce. By the close of this reflection, you can see that fear's dominion is not absolute. Its influence exists only where you grant it authority. Each moment of awareness, each deliberate action, each conscious choice diminishes its power. You move from reaction to intention, from limitation to possibility, from subtle bondage to authentic freedom. In recognizing fear as the hidden master, you take the essential step toward liberation. The chains of anxiety loosen as clarity and purpose take root. Decisions are no longer dictated by the shadows, but guided by your insight. And in that shift, you discover the profound truth. Courage is always within reach, and mastery over your life begins with the willingness to act, even in the presence of fear. Chapter 4. The Power of Choice Reclaiming Autonomy Over Money. Choice is the fulcrum on which freedom balances. It is deceptively simple, yet profoundly powerful. Every moment presents a decision, whether obvious or subtle, and each carries the potential to either reinforce old patterns or create new paths. When fear, habit, or external expectation governs your choices, autonomy is ceded. When awareness guides them, control and purpose take root. Reclaiming the power of choice is not a one-time act. It is a continuous practice, an intentional stance toward life, especially in the realm of money where influence and emotion intertwine so tightly. Consider how often decisions are made automatically. You may purchase something not from desire but obligation, save not from strategy but anxiety, invest not from purpose but imitation. These choices are rarely neutral. They accumulate over time, shaping your reality and reinforcing unseen chains. Autonomy begins when you notice this automaticity. Observation alone is the first act of reclaiming power. When you pause to witness how choices arise, you illuminate the mechanics that have long operated in the shadows. The power of choice is intertwined with awareness of values. Decisions become meaningful only when they are aligned with what matters to you, not what society dictates, not what fear suggests, not what past patterns compel. This requires clarity, a deep, uncompromising understanding of priorities, goals, and personal definitions of success. When decisions are aligned with these internal coordinates, money becomes a tool rather than a master. Autonomy emerges from coherence between action and intention. Choice also demands courage. Every deliberate act carries risk, the risk of criticism, of uncertainty, of loss. Fear often lurks in these moments, whispering that the safer path is the wiser one. Yet safety is rarely the same as freedom. Autonomy requires acknowledging these risks, feeling the tension of possibility, and deciding in spite of the fear. True power is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act consciously while fear exists. Reactive behavior is the antithesis of choice. It arises from conditioning, habit, or immediate emotional response. Reactive decisions are often framed as necessity. I must save. I cannot invest. I need to protect what I have, but they are driven by internalized pressures rather than conscious intent. By identifying reactive patterns, you begin to reclaim authority over action. Ask yourself, am I responding to my circumstances or to my internalized fears? Am I choosing consciously or obeying unseen scripts? These questions are the gateway to autonomy. Deliberate action requires structuring decisions around reflection. Before committing to a financial move, pause and consider its alignment with your objectives. Examine your motives. Is this choice driven by long-term vision or short-term comfort? Is it serving growth or merely protecting against imagined threat? By creating this pause, you transform the decision-making process from reaction to intentional strategy. Each pause strengthens the capacity for deliberate action and diminishes the unconscious sway of fear and habit. Choice is magnified when you recognize the illusion of inevitability. Too often, people accept circumstances as fixed, believing that their financial path is predetermined by external forces, past experiences, or societal pressures. In reality, autonomy arises from the recognition that every action, even small ones, shapes the trajectory of life. Money is a reflection of decisions made consistently over time. Each conscious choice tilts the scales toward freedom, purpose, and empowerment. Financial autonomy also depends on embracing responsibility. Choice carries consequence, and accountability is inherent in deliberate action. This is not a burden, it is a source of strength. When you claim responsibility for decisions, you reclaim agency. Successes are fully yours, and setbacks are instructive rather than shameful. Fear loses its leverage when you no longer attribute outcomes solely to external circumstance, but acknowledge your power to shape results through conscious action. Consider the cumulative impact of small choices. Daily financial decisions, how much to spend, save, invest, or give, build patterns that define the quality of life. Autonomy is cultivated in these moments. When decisions are conscious, aligned with values, and free from unconscious influence, they accumulate into a life that reflects intentional living rather than reactive survival. This is the essence of mastery, the recognition that freedom is built, one choice at a time. Choice also allows for experimentation. When you reclaim autonomy, you grant yourself permission to explore options that previously felt inaccessible. This may involve reallocating resources, testing new financial strategies, or reconsidering priorities. Experimentation is not reckless. It is informed by awareness and guided by purpose. Each trial offers insight, expanding the understanding of what is possible and gradually transforming uncertainty from threat into opportunity. Clarity is the bedrock of empowered choice. Without understanding your objectives, values, and emotional responses, decisions default to old patterns. Reflection provides this clarity. Journaling, structured planning, or even simple contemplative thought can illuminate motivations, fears, and priorities. When clarity is present, fear diminishes, reactive impulses weaken, and conscious choice flourishes. Autonomy is not a state achieved once, but a quality reinforced continuously through reflection and presence. Choice is further strengthened by the discipline of boundaries. Money, time, and energy are finite resources, and the way you allocate them shapes freedom. Setting limits on expenditure, risk, or emotional engagement prevents unconscious surrender to external pressures. Boundaries create the conditions for intentional action. They protect autonomy by defining the space in which choices are exercised consciously rather than chaotically. Empowerment through choice also demands resilience. Decisions made consciously will sometimes lead to unexpected outcomes. Plans may fail, markets may shift, and circumstances may challenge even the most deliberate intentions. Resilience is the ability to respond without surrender, to adapt without losing sight of purpose, and to learn from outcomes without self-reproach. Each recovery strengthens autonomy and reinforces the capacity to act intentionally in the future. There is a profound psychological liberation in recognizing that you are the author of your financial life. Autonomy transforms money from a master into a mirror, reflecting your values, intentions, and priorities. When decisions are consciously chosen, every transaction, investment, or allocation becomes an act of self-expression rather than submission. Power, in this sense, is not about accumulation alone, but about intentionality and alignment between action and inner truth. Choice also fosters emotional equilibrium. When decisions are guided by awareness, anxiety diminishes. Fear has less power because you are actively engaged in shaping outcomes rather than being swept along by circumstance. Clarity reduces impulsivity and obsession, allowing for steadier, more confident decision-making. In this state, money serves as a tool for growth and expression, rather than a source of hidden coercion. Ultimately, the power of choice lies in its consistency. One deliberate decision builds the foundation, but repeated conscious choices create momentum. Patterns shift, habits transform, and autonomy becomes a lived reality rather than an aspiration. This is how freedom manifests, not in a single grand act, but in a lifetime of decisions made with presence, courage, and clarity. As this chapter closes, reflect on the immense potential held in every moment of decision. Recognize that autonomy is always available, waiting to be claimed, and that each act of conscious choice strengthens your command over life, finances, and destiny. The power to shape your circumstances resides not in wealth alone, but in the deliberate, mindful decisions that define how wealth is used, protected, and directed. In reclaiming the power of choice, you step fully into agency. Fear, habit, and external pressures no longer dictate outcomes. Instead, intentionality and purpose guide your path, and with each conscious decision, the invisible chains that once constrained you weaken. Freedom is not a distant ideal. It is a lived experience created one deliberate choice at a time. Chapter 5. Breaking patterns, escaping repetition and limitation. There is a rhythm to life, one that can be both comforting and confining. Repetition creates familiarity, a sense of safety in knowing what comes next. Yet, when the same cycles persist in your financial life, patterns of behavior that no longer serve you can quietly entrap you. Over time, these habitual responses to money, fear, and circumstance shape the trajectory of your life, often without conscious awareness. Breaking patterns is not an act of rebellion. It is an act of liberation, a conscious choice to step beyond the loops that limit your growth and autonomy. Patterns emerge for reasons. They are born from early experiences, cultural conditioning, past successes or failures, and emotional habits. They provide predictability and guidance when life feels uncertain. Yet, when patterns are unexamined, they can become invisible constraints. You may find yourself repeating financial mistakes, staying in unsatisfying work, or overextending to protect security, without realizing that the very behaviors meant to protect you are also restricting your freedom. The first step in breaking a pattern is awareness. Begin by observing the choices you make regularly, particularly those that feel automatic. Notice where fear or habit, rather than intention, guides your behavior. Do you save compulsively yet avoid investing? Do you work excessively to accumulate wealth while neglecting fulfillment? Do you defer opportunities because risk feels uncomfortable? Each repeated action is a clue, a signal of an ingrained pattern that demands attention. Awareness alone is not enough. It must be paired with curiosity. Examine each pattern without judgment. Ask, what is this behavior accomplishing? What fear, desire, or belief sustains it? How has it shaped my life, both positively and negatively? Understanding the purpose behind a pattern is crucial. Even limiting behaviors often serve protective or adaptive functions. Recognizing this allows you to approach change with compassion and clarity rather than self-criticism or denial. Breaking patterns requires intentional interruption. A new choice, a different response, or a deliberate pause can shift the trajectory. For example, if you habitually defer investing out of fear, taking one small, calculated step toward investment introduces disruption into the cycle. If you habitually overspend for comfort, pausing before a purchase and evaluating true motivation creates awareness and choice. Each conscious interruption weakens the automaticity of the pattern, opening space for deliberate action. Patterns are reinforced by consistency. Small, repeated behaviors compound over time, whether they are productive or limiting. Understanding this helps you see that breaking a pattern is not a single act but a process of repeated, deliberate choices. Each time you choose differently, you strengthen new neural pathways, create new habits, and shift the energy that previously reinforced limitation. Transformation occurs gradually but inevitably when consistency is applied with intention. Emotional patterns are particularly persistent. Anxiety, guilt, and attachment often underpin repeated behaviors. For example, compulsive saving may mask fear of scarcity, while overextending resources may hide insecurity or the need for approval. Breaking patterns requires emotional honesty, recognizing not only what you do, but why you do it. You cannot change the surface behavior without addressing the underlying emotional currents. Awareness of emotion allows you to design responses that are intentional rather than reactive. One powerful tool in breaking patterns is reflection. Keep a record of recurring financial behaviors, emotional triggers, and decision-making processes. Journaling, mental mapping, or even daily contemplation can illuminate cycles that were previously unconscious. Reflection creates a pause between habit and action, a space where choice and awareness can intervene. Over time, these observations clarify which patterns serve your purpose and which constrain it. Another essential element is experimentation. New behaviors must be tested and refined to replace old cycles effectively. This may involve trying alternative financial strategies, adjusting routines, or exploring different ways of thinking about value, abundance, and security. Experimentation is not reckless. It is intentional. Each trial provides data, insight, and momentum toward autonomy. Even setbacks are instructive, revealing hidden assumptions or emotional triggers that need attention. Environment and support also shape patterns. Surroundings, relationships, and societal messages often reinforce limiting behaviors. If scarcity, judgment, or fear dominate your environment, patterns are more difficult to disrupt. Awareness includes recognizing external influences and, when possible, adjusting them. Seek perspectives, practices, and spaces that encourage conscious choice and autonomy. The energy around you either supports transformation or perpetuates repetition. Breaking patterns requires patience. Old cycles are deeply ingrained and may resist change. You may feel tension, uncertainty, or discomfort as new behaviors take root. These feelings are natural. They signal that growth is occurring. Persistence is essential. Each conscious choice, each intentional action, slowly unravels the threads of limitation, replacing them with new habits that reflect purpose, awareness, and freedom. Visualization is another tool that strengthens pattern disruption. Imagine the life you desire, free from habitual constraints, guided by conscious choice rather than fear. Visualizing outcomes creates clarity, motivates action, and reinforces new neural pathways. When paired with deliberate steps in daily life, visualization bridges the gap between possibility and reality, making transformation tangible and achievable. Accountability amplifies change. Share goals, intentions, or reflections with a trusted person, or record them privately to create commitment. Accountability transforms abstract intention into concrete practice. It reinforces awareness, encourages consistency, and provides feedback on progress. When breaking patterns, isolation can allow old behaviors to creep back. Accountability strengthens resolve and reinforces autonomy. It is also essential to forgive yourself for past repetitions. Patterns persist because they once served a function or because fear and conditioning were strong. Judgment creates resistance. Compassion creates freedom. Recognize the wisdom embedded in past behaviors, even as you choose to act differently moving forward. Self-compassion fuels courage, resilience, and clarity, providing the emotional foundation necessary for lasting change. Breaking patterns is ultimately about reclaiming choice, autonomy, and conscious control over your life. It is about transforming repetition into intentional rhythm, fear-driven cycles into deliberate strategies, and unconscious habit into empowered behavior. Each step forward, no matter how small, weakens old constraints, reinforces new possibilities, and gradually reshapes your relationship with money, action, and self. As you disrupt limiting cycles, you may notice shifts in perception. Opportunities that once felt risky now feel accessible. Decisions that once felt heavy now feel manageable. Anxiety that once dominated your thinking now becomes a signal to observe rather than obey. Life, once dictated by habit and fear, begins to respond to conscious action. Autonomy becomes a lived experience rather than an abstract concept. Integration is key. Recognizing patterns, interrupting cycles, experimenting, and reflecting must all be practiced together. Each element strengthens the others. Awareness without action leads to frustration. Action without awareness risks repetition. Reflection without implementation is incomplete. By combining these strategies, you create a comprehensive system for breaking patterns that is both sustainable and transformative. Ultimately, the liberation found in breaking patterns is profound. It restores space for conscious choice, creativity, and authentic action. Money, fear, and habit no longer operate unconsciously. They become visible, manageable, and navigable. Life opens into possibilities previously hidden behind the curtain of repetition, and each deliberate action moves you closer to mastery, freedom, and clarity. By the close of this chapter, recognize the subtle power of the cycles you have inherited, yet also acknowledge your capacity to change them. Every decision, every observation, every intentional pause weakens repetition and reinforces autonomy. Breaking patterns is not merely a practical act, it is a profound reclamation of self, a declaration that your life will no longer be unconsciously constrained. Freedom is not distant, it emerges each time you choose differently, acting consciously, deliberately, and with purpose. Chapter 6. The Mirror of Desire: Understanding What Money Truly Represents. Money is never just a number in a bank account, a coin in a jar, or a line on a ledger. It carries meaning far beyond its material form. Often, it reflects our deepest desires, unspoken longings, and hidden insecurities. It embodies the hopes we hold for ourselves, the validation we seek from others, and the sense of control we crave over life's uncertainties. Understanding what money truly represents is not merely an intellectual exercise. It is a journey inward into the emotions, beliefs, and patterns that shape how you live, spend, and relate to abundance. Observe your reactions to money. Notice the feelings that arise when you gain or lose it. Are there subtle tremors of fear, relief, pride, guilt, or envy? These emotional responses are clues revealing the symbolic weight money carries in your life. For some, it signifies security, the promise of survival and stability. For others, it represents status, power, or influence. And for many, it mirrors self-worth, reflecting beliefs about who they are and what they deserve. Recognizing these associations is the first step in understanding the deeper story money tells about you. The mirror of desire often reflects more than conscious intention. You may think you are pursuing money for practical reasons, yet beneath the surface, emotional currents steer behavior. Are you overworking to prove value, overspending to soothe discomfort, or withholding generosity to protect identity? These behaviors reveal unmet needs, fears, or unacknowledged drives. Money becomes a symbol of these deeper currents, a tangible measure of intangible longings. By exploring these connections, you begin to disentangle meaning from habit, impulse from necessity. Desire itself is not inherently problematic. It is a compass pointing to what matters most, what inspires effort and commitment. The challenge arises when desire is unexamined, when it directs choices unconsciously, and when it is amplified by fear, expectation, or societal pressure. The mirror shows not only the raw longing, but also the distortions, The ways in which your relationship with money may be misaligned with your authentic purpose. Recognizing this distinction transforms desire from a controlling force into a guiding instrument. Money often acts as a measure of identity. You may define yourself by what you earn, own, or control. While this can motivate achievement, it can also trap you in comparison and competition. The mirror reflects not just what you have, but how you see yourself through the lens of what you possess. When wealth becomes synonymous with worth, choices are no longer fully free. They are constrained by the need to maintain or prove value. Understanding this connection allows you to separate identity from accumulation, freeing your decisions from the weight of external validation. Attachment to money frequently signals a desire for control. Life is inherently unpredictable, and money offers a sense of command over uncertainty. Yet the pursuit of control through accumulation is a subtle form of self-limitation. You may hoard, overplan, or resist change, believing that security and stability can be manufactured. The mirror reveals the cost, the narrowing of possibility, the amplification of fear, and the diminishment of spontaneity and growth. Understanding this dynamic is crucial to reclaiming balance. Examine also the desire for recognition and status. Money can be a social mirror, reflecting approval, admiration, or envy. Choices influenced by these motivations may feel pressured, performative, or disconnected from genuine purpose. By observing how social comparison shapes spending, saving, or investing, you gain insight into which decisions are truly your own and which are echoes of external expectation. The mirror clarifies where authenticity aligns, or clashes, with societal influence. Desire, however, is not solely a reflection of lack or insecurity. It can illuminate purpose, aspiration, and creativity. Money may serve as a tool to manifest values, support vision, and enable meaningful impact. When aligned with intention, it amplifies rather than constrains. The mirror in this case becomes a guide, showing what drives your actions and how resources can be directed toward the life you wish to create. Recognizing this alignment fosters empowerment and clarity. Understanding the symbolic nature of money also requires examining stories from the past. Family, culture, and early experiences shape beliefs about wealth and worth. Perhaps scarcity messages dominated your upbringing, creating anxiety and hypervigilance. Perhaps abundance was framed as dangerous or morally questionable, generating guilt around success. These inherited narratives influence choices unconsciously, shaping the emotional resonance of money in your life. The mirror reveals these shadows, offering a chance to rewrite the story consciously. Emotional awareness is key. Notice the sensations in your body when you think about wealth, spending, or scarcity. Tension, tightness, restlessness, or excitement all signal deeper meanings attached to money. By cultivating attention to these sensations, you connect with the subtle ways desire guides behavior. Each observation is an opportunity to align action with conscious intention rather than unconscious compulsion. The mirror becomes a tool, reflecting truth without judgment. Desire also intersects with purpose. Money is most powerful when it serves intention rather than ego. Ask yourself, what do I hope to achieve with these resources? How does accumulation, spending, or allocation serve my growth, creativity, or values? When money becomes a servant of purpose rather than a driver of longing, its influence shifts from controlling to empowering. Awareness of this alignment transforms the emotional resonance of every financial decision. Patterns of attachment often reveal unspoken fears as well. The mirror reflects anxiety over scarcity, insecurity, or loss. It exposes avoidance behaviors, procrastination, or overcompensation. Each pattern carries insight, guiding you toward areas requiring conscious intervention. Recognizing these patterns allows you to address the emotional undercurrents shaping financial behavior, replacing unconscious compulsion with intentional strategy. The mirror of desire invites reflection, not judgment. Curiosity and honesty are essential. Examine the ways money shapes self-perception, choices, and emotional responses. Explore the subtle connections between accumulation, identity, and purpose. Question which desires are authentic and which are projections of fear, expectation, or habit. By facing these reflections directly, you cultivate clarity, empowerment, and freedom. Transformation occurs when desire is acknowledged and directed consciously. Money becomes a tool for expression, growth, and alignment, rather than a measure of worth or a source of fear. Every financial choice, saving, spending, investing, or giving, can then reflect values, intention, and self-mastery. The mirror no longer dictates action. It illuminates path and purpose, revealing the authentic motivations beneath the surface. Integration of insight requires practice. Observe patterns, reflect on meaning, and make conscious decisions. Test new approaches aligned with purpose rather than compulsion. Monitor emotional responses and adjust as necessary. Each deliberate action reinforces autonomy, strengthens clarity, and shifts the role of money from controlling force to conscious instrument. The mirror guides but does not govern. Ultimately, understanding what money truly represents is a journey inward. It uncovers attachment, fear, desire, and ambition, revealing both limitations and potential. It allows you to navigate financial life with intention, clarity, and alignment. The mirror of desire is not a mirror of judgment, but a reflection of truth, a map pointing toward conscious choice, authentic action, and purposeful living. As this chapter closes, consider the reflections you have observed. Recognize the emotions, beliefs, and desires shaping your relationship with money. Acknowledge patterns that have influenced behavior unconsciously and explore the ways in which conscious awareness can transform them. In doing so, you begin to reclaim authority over your resources, redirect desire toward purpose, and step into a life where money serves rather than dictates, illuminates rather than confines. The mirror shows you more than wealth, it shows you yourself. And in that reflection lies the power to transform, align, and act with clarity, turning desire into deliberate, empowering, and intentional life choices. Chapter 7. Emotional Mastery Over Wealth, Transforming Anxiety and Obsession into Clarity. Money carries weight far beyond its material value. It embodies security, freedom, desire, and fear. It has the power to excite and to unsettle, to motivate and to control. Without emotional mastery, the forces tied to wealth, anxiety, obsession, attachment, and envy, can dominate decision-making, skew perspective, and subtly dictate the course of life. Emotional mastery over wealth is the ability to recognize these currents, understand their origins, and redirect their energy toward intentional, empowering action. It is the difference between money serving your purpose and your purpose being dictated by money. The first step in emotional mastery is awareness. Observe your internal responses to money. Notice the tightness in your chest when bills arrive, the rush of excitement when income increases, the quiet anxiety that lingers after a purchase. These feelings are signals, not obstacles. They reflect beliefs, fears, and attachments that operate beneath conscious thought. By recognizing and naming these emotions, you create the space to respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively. Awareness transforms emotional chaos into opportunity. Anxiety is often the most powerful influence in financial life. It masquerades as prudence or responsibility, convincing you that hesitation, overplanning, or excessive saving is necessary for safety. While caution can be useful, anxiety distorts reality, magnifies risk, and narrows possibility. It can make a small loss feel catastrophic and a modest gain feel insufficient. Emotional mastery requires seeing this distortion clearly, understanding that anxiety is not a reliable guide to action, but a signal that your beliefs and attachments need attention. Obsession is another subtle force. When thoughts of money consume energy, attention, or peace of mind, freedom is compromised. Obsession often emerges from insecurity, unmet desires, or a belief that control is attainable through accumulation. It pushes behaviors such as constant monitoring, compulsive comparison, or excessive planning. Emotional mastery involves recognizing these impulses, observing them without judgment, and redirecting focus toward purposeful, values-aligned action. Obsession need not be eradicated entirely. Its energy can be transformed into discipline and strategy rather than compulsion. Attachment to outcomes often drives emotional reactivity. You may tie self-worth to financial success, equate stability with identity, or fear loss as a reflection of personal failure. These attachments magnify emotional responses and limit autonomy. Mastery begins when you separate identity from outcome, observing results without conflating them with intrinsic value. Money becomes a measure of effort, strategy, or intention, not a judgment on your worth or capability. The cultivation of clarity is essential. Emotional clarity allows you to act from intention rather than reaction. When a financial decision arises, pause to assess, what am I feeling? Why am I feeling this? Is this emotion guiding me or controlling me? What values or goals should direct my action? This practice fosters conscious engagement with money, transforming emotional turbulence into insight, focus, and purposeful choice. Reflection is a powerful tool. Keep track of emotional patterns associated with wealth, moments of fear, impulse, excitement, or regret. Identify triggers and recurring themes. Over time, patterns emerge, revealing the subtle ways emotions influence decisions. With this knowledge, you can design strategies to respond intentionally, reinforcing autonomy and diminishing the power of reactive emotion. Self-awareness must be paired with self-regulation. Techniques such as mindfulness, deliberate breathing, and contemplative pause provide a buffer between emotional impulse and action. When anxiety arises, for example, breathing and reflection can prevent reactive spending or avoidance. Emotional regulation is not about suppressing feelings. It is about acknowledging them, understanding their source, and responding with clarity rather than surrender. Boundaries are crucial in emotional mastery. They protect energy and preserve autonomy. Establish limits on financial exposure, commitments, and risk in alignment with values rather than fear. Boundaries prevent impulsive reactions to external pressure or internal compulsion, creating space for deliberate decision-making. By defining what is acceptable and what is not, you transform potential emotional chaos into a structured environment conducive to intentional action. Perspective is another essential element. Fear and obsession often magnify challenges while minimizing resources and opportunity. Emotional mastery requires honest assessment. What is truly at stake? What resources, skills, and knowledge do I possess to navigate this situation? How likely is the worst-case scenario, and how would I respond? Perspective balances emotional intensity with reason, guiding decisions that are deliberate rather than reactive. Transformation of emotional energy is central to mastery. Anxiety, tension, or compulsion can be redirected into strategy, planning, and disciplined action. Acknowledge the energy without allowing it to dominate. Channel it into productive processes, reviewing budgets, evaluating opportunities, learning new skills, or refining goals. When energy is transformed, emotion becomes an instrument rather than an obstacle, fueling insight, focus, and purpose. Integration of emotional insight and practical action strengthens mastery. Observation, reflection, regulation, and strategic redirection must operate in harmony. Awareness alone is insufficient. Deliberate practice is required to shift habitual responses. Regularly examine behaviors, emotional triggers, and decision-making patterns. Adjust processes as needed. Each act of conscious engagement reinforces autonomy and transforms the relationship with wealth from reactive to empowered. Emotional mastery also involves reframing challenges. Setbacks, unexpected expenses, or market fluctuations are inevitable. Responding with awareness rather than panic turns obstacles into learning opportunities. Each situation provides data, insights about risk tolerance, behavioral tendencies, and areas requiring adjustment. Mastery grows when challenges are viewed as guides rather than threats, strengthening resilience and reinforcing confidence in decision-making. Generosity is a reflection of mastery. When emotional reactivity diminishes, choices are less driven by fear, scarcity, or attachment, allowing giving and contribution to flow naturally. Wealth can then be deployed consciously to align with values, purpose, and impact, reinforcing empowerment. Generosity becomes deliberate rather than reactive, and action reflects intention, not compulsion. Accountability reinforces emotional mastery. Share intentions, reflections, or strategies with trusted advisors, peers, or mentors. Feedback provides perspective, highlights blind spots, and strengthens consistency. Accountability transforms emotional awareness into concrete practice, bridging insight and action, reinforcing deliberate engagement with financial life. The cumulative effect of emotional mastery is profound. Decisions are guided by purpose rather than impulse. Anxiety no longer dictates avoidance, obsession no longer dictates control, and attachment no longer dictates self-worth. Clarity replaces compulsion. Each conscious choice strengthens autonomy, creating a life where money serves values and intention, rather than fear and desire. Ultimately, emotional mastery is an ongoing practice, not a destination. Life will continue to present challenges, temptations, and uncertainty. Mastery lies in the consistent ability to recognize internal currents, understand their origins, and respond deliberately. Emotional clarity becomes the compass, guiding action, decision-making, and the relationship with wealth. As this chapter closes, reflect on the transformative potential of emotional mastery. Observe patterns of anxiety, obsession, and attachment, and acknowledge how they have influenced past decisions. Commit to awareness, reflection, and deliberate action as tools for change. Each conscious step weakens the power of reactive emotion, strengthens autonomy, and turns money from a controlling force into a vehicle for clarity, empowerment, and purposeful living. When emotions are understood, regulated, and directed, wealth ceases to be a source of anxiety or obsession. It becomes a mirror, a tool, and a reflection of deliberate intention. In mastering emotional currents, you reclaim the power that was always within you, allowing choice, clarity, and autonomy to guide every financial decision, every investment, and every act of abundance. Chapter 8. Rewriting your money story, changing beliefs that limit you. Every relationship with money carries a story. It is a narrative shaped by upbringing, culture, personal experience, and unspoken rules absorbed over a lifetime. This story quietly influences every decision, every impulse, and every emotional response related to wealth. Often, the narrative is neither fully conscious nor entirely accurate. It is layered with fears, assumptions, and beliefs that limit potential and restrict freedom. Rewriting your money story is an act of liberation, a deliberate reshaping of the beliefs that have guided your financial life, empowering you to create a narrative aligned with purpose, abundance, and clarity. The first step in rewriting is recognition. Pause and reflect. What stories have you inherited or told yourself about money? Are they filled with scarcity, fear, or limitation? Do they emphasize struggle, loss, or inadequacy? Many people carry messages like, "I will never have enough," "money is dangerous," or "I do not deserve wealth." These narratives, often absorbed silently, guide behavior far more powerfully than conscious intention. Awareness of these stories illuminates the patterns they create and opens the door to change. Once you recognize the limiting narrative, explore its origins. Early experiences, family attitudes, cultural beliefs, personal setbacks often sow seeds of fear, attachment, or insecurity. Perhaps scarcity dominated your childhood, creating anxiety that manifests in compulsive saving or avoidance of risk. Perhaps success was framed as shameful, prompting guilt or secrecy around earnings. Understanding the roots of these beliefs transforms judgment into insight. You see that these narratives were adaptive at one time, yet may now constrain rather than serve you. Rewriting begins with challenge. Question each limiting belief with curiosity and honesty. Is it objectively true? Does it reflect current circumstances or outdated fears? How does it shape behavior? For example, if the story is "I will never have enough," ask, what evidence contradicts this? What resources, skills, or opportunities exist that demonstrate abundance is possible? Each challenge weakens the grip of fear and opens space for possibility. Language shapes story. The words used to describe money, wealth, and worth reinforce beliefs. Shift language consciously. Replace "I cannot afford this" with "I choose to allocate resources differently." Transform "I am always behind" into "I am learning to manage resources with purpose." Words are the scaffolding of narrative. Changing them alters perception, emotional response, and action. Conscious language recodes habitual thought patterns and reshapes the emotional resonance of money. Visualization and mental rehearsal are powerful tools in story rewriting. Imagine a life where scarcity, fear, or limitation do not dominate your decisions. Picture yourself managing resources with clarity, freedom, and confidence. Visualize abundance flowing through deliberate choices, aligned with purpose and values. These mental exercises reinforce new neural pathways, making the rewritten story feel credible and attainable. The mind begins to anticipate new possibilities, and behavior gradually follows. Action anchors narrative. New beliefs must be expressed through deliberate behavior. Choose financial decisions that reflect the story you wish to live. If generosity, abundance, or strategic risk-taking is part of the narrative, act accordingly. Each intentional choice reinforces the revised story, integrating belief with behavior. Storytelling alone is insufficient. Lived experience validates transformation. Patterns of self-sabotage often resist rewriting. Old beliefs can surface subtly. Hesitation, doubt, or guilt creeping into decision-making. When these moments arise, acknowledge without judgment. Use awareness as a tool to return to the conscious narrative. Each time you choose in alignment with the new story, the old narrative loses authority. Persistence and consistency are essential. Change is gradual, cumulative, and reinforced through repeated deliberate action. Financial education complements story transformation. Knowledge is a stabilizing force, replacing fear with understanding, uncertainty with clarity. When beliefs are rooted in insight rather than assumption, confidence grows. Learning about budgeting, investment, and strategic planning strengthens the rewritten narrative, providing practical tools that align intention with action. Information supports autonomy, dissolves outdated fears, and reinforces the story of empowerment. Integration of emotion is critical. Rewriting the story is not simply intellectual. It involves aligning emotional responses with new beliefs. Fear, guilt, or scarcity may linger. Rather than suppressing these feelings, acknowledge and redirect them. Emotional alignment ensures that decisions flow naturally from the rewritten narrative, reinforcing autonomy and minimizing internal conflict. The emotional dimension solidifies the transformation. Supportive environments accelerate change. Surround yourself with perspectives, practices, and relationships that reinforce the revised story. Avoid spaces that perpetuate fear, judgment, or scarcity-based thinking. Conversations, mentorship, and communities attuned to intentional wealth, purpose, and growth provide reinforcement. External alignment strengthens internal change, creating conditions conducive to sustainable transformation. Rewriting your money story also requires patience. Deeply held beliefs are resilient, often returning in moments of stress, challenge, or comparison. Each time they resurface, view them as opportunities to reaffirm the new narrative. Respond consciously rather than reactively, and each repetition strengthens autonomy and clarity. Transformation is reinforced by perseverance and deliberate practice over time. Reflection and journaling are powerful aids. Record the old narratives, note moments when they arise, and document choices aligned with the new story. Over time, patterns emerge, progress becomes visible, and the rewritten narrative solidifies. Reflection bridges cognition, emotion, and action, creating a cohesive and integrated transformation. The process of rewriting is also about empowerment. Limiting beliefs often function to maintain perceived safety or avoid risk, but they cost autonomy, confidence, and opportunity. Each step toward rewriting affirms your authority over life and finances. Each conscious choice reinforces the narrative of control, purpose, and possibility. In this way, the rewritten story is both a roadmap and a declaration. You are the author of your financial life. Integration with broader purpose amplifies impact. Align the revised story with personal values, long-term goals, and life vision. When money serves intention rather than fear or habit, the narrative becomes coherent, meaningful, and resilient. The story then informs all decisions, from daily spending to major investments, ensuring actions reflect alignment with authentic desire and purpose. Transformation manifests gradually. Initially, the old story may resist, emotions may fluctuate, and old habits may reappear. Yet with awareness, deliberate action, reflection, and emotional alignment, the new story asserts itself. Confidence grows, choices become purposeful, and financial behavior reflects intention rather than compulsion. The narrative shifts from limitation to empowerment, from fear to clarity, and from reaction to deliberate action. Ultimately, rewriting your money story is an act of reclamation. It acknowledges the influence of past conditioning while asserting autonomy in the present. It transforms the hidden scripts that have governed choices into conscious, values-driven guidance. Each reflection, each decision, and each deliberate act reinforces a life where money is a tool of empowerment, freedom, and purpose, rather than a source of fear or limitation. As this chapter closes, consider the narratives that have silently shaped your financial life. Reflect on the beliefs that have restricted freedom, dictated choices, or amplified anxiety. Then consciously craft the story you wish to live, a narrative that affirms worth, embraces possibility, and guides deliberate action. In rewriting your money story, you step into authorship, reclaim autonomy, and create the foundation for a life of clarity, empowerment, and intentional abundance. Chapter 9. Aligning money with purpose, turning finances into a force for growth. Money in isolation is inert. Its value lies not in accumulation, but in direction and use. When wealth is aligned with purpose, it becomes a tool for transformation, creativity, and fulfillment. Without alignment, money can drift through life unnoticed, shaping behavior unconsciously, feeding fear or desire, and reinforcing cycles that limit freedom. Purpose provides the lens through which resources gain meaning, focus, and impact. Aligning money with purpose is an act of intentional living, a conscious choice to channel energy and resources toward what truly matters. The first step in alignment is clarity. What do you value most? What outcomes, experiences, or contributions define a meaningful life? Without clarity of purpose, financial decisions are reactive, guided by habit, emotion, or external expectation. When values are defined, money becomes a servant to goals rather than a driver of anxiety or compulsion. Clarity transforms spending, saving, and investing from mechanical acts into deliberate extensions of intent. Begin by examining current financial behavior. Where does money flow now, and how does it reflect or contradict your purpose? Are resources consumed in ways that reinforce growth, creativity, or stability? Or do they sustain patterns of fear, comparison, or superficial validation? Mapping current allocation reveals unconscious priorities and highlights areas for realignment. Awareness of actual behavior is crucial, because purpose without action is aspirational. Alignment requires both vision and implementation. Purpose is dynamic, not static. Life evolves, and so do priorities. Alignment requires regular review and adjustment. Periodically assess whether spending, saving, and investment choices continue to reflect values and goals. This ongoing reflection prevents drift, ensures relevance, and reinforces intentionality. Alignment is an active practice, a continuous dialogue between intention and action, vision and resources. Emotions often intersect with purpose. Spending or accumulation may be guided by desire, fear, or compulsion rather than values. Aligning money with purpose requires emotional honesty, recognizing when choices are reactive and redirecting them toward intentional goals. When emotional impulses are acknowledged but not permitted to dominate, financial action becomes conscious, strategic, and empowering. Prioritization is a critical element. Purpose provides focus, but limited resources require choice. Determine which goals, values, or experiences deserve financial attention first. Decide what is essential, what can wait, and what is unnecessary. Prioritization strengthens alignment by ensuring that resources are invested where they create the greatest impact, reinforcing intentionality and reducing wasted energy or expenditure. Integration of long-term and short-term perspectives enhances alignment. Purpose may encompass immediate needs, ongoing growth, and future aspirations simultaneously. Balancing daily decisions with broader objectives ensures that money supports life holistically. For example, investing in education, health, or skill development serves both current well-being and future growth. Alignment creates coherence between action and long-term vision. Investment is a practical manifestation of alignment. Resources can be deployed strategically to generate returns that reinforce purpose. Investments should reflect risk tolerance, long-term goals, and ethical alignment. When resources are applied thoughtfully, they serve both practical outcomes and the deeper narrative of intentional living. Investment becomes more than profit. It is an extension of purpose-driven strategy. Generosity is another avenue for alignment. Purpose often includes contribution, impact, or support for others. Allocating resources intentionally toward causes, communities, or individuals aligns financial action with values. Giving, when deliberate, transforms money from a transactional tool into a vehicle for meaning, reinforcing purpose and connection. The act of contribution magnifies the transformative potential of wealth. Boundaries strengthen alignment. Deliberate limits on spending, commitment, or exposure protect focus and resources. Boundaries prevent diffusion of energy into activities or purchases that do not serve purpose. They create a framework in which money can flow predictably and intentionally, reducing distraction and enabling sustained focus on priorities that matter most. Systems and routines support alignment. Establishing processes for budgeting, saving, investing, and giving ensures consistency and reduces the influence of emotion or impulse. Systems translate purpose into practical action, bridging intention and outcome. Automation, planning, and structured oversight reinforce alignment, making deliberate choices habitual and reliable. Reflection and evaluation are ongoing practices. Periodically ask, are my financial decisions reflecting my deepest values and intentions? Are resources being used efficiently to support growth, stability, and fulfillment? Where are gaps between vision and action? Reflection maintains awareness, strengthens intentionality, and allows for corrective adjustment, keeping money aligned with purpose over time. Purpose-driven alignment also cultivates resilience. When challenges arise, unexpected expenses, market fluctuations, or setbacks, the guiding framework of values and goals provides direction and clarity. Alignment reduces reactivity, anxiety, and impulsive decision-making. Resources are applied strategically rather than chaotically, reinforcing both stability and confidence. Clarity, prioritization, and boundaries create a coherent financial strategy, while reflection, evaluation, and systems ensure sustainability. Emotional awareness ensures that actions are guided by intention rather than compulsion. Together, these elements form a comprehensive framework for aligning money with purpose, transforming resources into instruments of growth, stability, and impact. Every financial decision becomes an opportunity to reinforce purpose. Daily spending, long-term investment, and acts of contribution are no longer isolated transactions. They become statements of intention, extensions of values, and reflections of personal narrative. Alignment turns money into a tool for meaningful action rather than a source of stress, obligation, or anxiety. Integration with life vision amplifies impact. Purpose extends beyond wealth into health, relationships, creativity, and personal development. Financial alignment is most powerful when embedded in a holistic view of life, supporting well-being, growth, and fulfillment across multiple dimensions. Money becomes a facilitator, enabling a coherent, intentional, and meaningful existence. Transformation occurs gradually but perceptibly. Initial adjustments may feel deliberate or awkward, but consistency builds momentum. Choices increasingly reflect intention, emotional responses diminish, and the trajectory of resources aligns with the life you envision. With practice, the relationship with money shifts from passive management to conscious stewardship, from reaction to deliberate action. Ultimately, aligning money with purpose is an act of sovereignty. It places control in your hands, directs energy toward meaningful outcomes, and transforms wealth into a tool for personal and collective impact. Money ceases to be a source of fear, obsession, or compulsion. It becomes an instrument for intentional living, a reflection of clarity, and a vehicle for growth. As this chapter closes, reflect on the alignment between your financial behavior and your deepest purpose. Identify areas where resources flow unconsciously, areas where intention is strong, and areas requiring adjustment. Commit to deliberate, values-driven decisions that turn money into a force for growth, empowerment, and meaningful impact. By aligning money with purpose, you step into conscious stewardship, transforming resources into tools for a life lived fully, intentionally, and without compromise. Chapter 10. Systems of sovereignty, creating structures that support freedom. Freedom is not merely the absence of constraint. It is the presence of deliberate structure. Autonomy over finances, choices, and life is reinforced through systems. Intentional processes that reduce chaos, clarify priorities, and preserve energy for decisions that matter. Without such systems, even the most disciplined intentions can falter under the weight of unpredictability, distraction, or emotion. Systems of sovereignty transform potential overwhelm into actionable order, ensuring that freedom is not fragile but sustainable. Begin by examining existing structures. Where does organization support clarity, and where does disorder create stress or inefficiency? Systems may exist in subtle forms: automatic bill payments, budgeting spreadsheets, investment schedules, or recurring routines. Assess their effectiveness. Are they aligned with values, goals, and purpose? Are they reducing friction, enhancing consistency, and preserving energy? Understanding the current state of your financial architecture provides the foundation for intentional design. Prioritization is essential. Systems work best when they reflect clear intention. Determine which areas of life and finance require structure first. Essentials might include tracking income and expenses, managing obligations, and ensuring regular contributions to savings or investment. By addressing the most impactful areas initially, you create a stable base from which more complex or aspirational structures can grow. Systems without priority risk becoming cumbersome rather than liberating. Automation is a powerful ally in sovereignty. Repetition and consistency are more easily maintained when processes are programmed rather than manually executed. Automatic savings, recurring investments, scheduled bill payments, and predefined allocations to discretionary spending reduce the need for constant decision-making. Automation frees mental space, diminishes the influence of emotion, and ensures that foundational behaviors are executed reliably, supporting long-term stability. Accountability enhances system integrity. Track progress, measure outcomes, and adjust where necessary. Accountability can be internal, through journaling or digital tracking, or external, via mentorship, financial advisors, or trusted peers. Consistent evaluation identifies inefficiencies, prevents drift, and reinforces alignment with intention. A well-designed system is only as effective as the monitoring and refinement applied to it. Boundaries are structural as well as conceptual. Define limits for spending, exposure to risk, and resource allocation. Boundaries prevent overreach, reduce impulsive decisions, and create predictability. By establishing clear thresholds, you create a framework within which freedom can operate without sacrificing responsibility or long-term objectives. Boundaries transform potential chaos into predictable, manageable flow. Integration of financial and life systems amplifies sovereignty. Money is intertwined with daily habits, routines, and priorities. Synchronize structures across domains, time management, work, personal development, and well-being. Cohesive systems reduce conflict between goals, clarify trade-offs, and allow resources, emotional, mental, and financial, to be allocated strategically. The result is a network of interconnected systems that reinforce autonomy, clarity, and resilience. Flexibility is equally critical. Systems must adapt to change, new priorities, and unexpected events. Rigid processes can create stress and stifle opportunity. Sovereignty lies in balance. Systems must provide consistency while allowing for adjustment. Regular review, scenario planning, and contingency strategies ensure that structures serve purpose rather than constrain it. Adaptive systems respond to life's unpredictability while maintaining the integrity of freedom. Decision frameworks are foundational. Establish criteria for choices, including spending, investing, and opportunity evaluation. Define thresholds, priorities, and desired outcomes. Decision frameworks reduce the influence of emotion, fear, or impulse, providing a clear reference point when uncertainty arises. When aligned with values and purpose, these frameworks transform reactive behavior into deliberate, empowered action. Documentation reinforces clarity, record processes, strategies, and intentions. Written or digital records provide reference points, reinforce accountability, and prevent drift. Documentation creates transparency and ensures that systems are consistently applied, even in moments of distraction or stress. Clear records anchor decision-making and strategy rather than habit or emotion. Ritual and routine reinforce system adoption. Establish regular check-ins, reviews, and reflective practices. These moments create a rhythm that sustains engagement, reinforces awareness, and strengthens the connection between intention and action. Routine transforms effort into habit, ensuring that sovereignty is maintained without constant vigilance. Emotional alignment supports structural integrity. Systems are only effective when they harmonize with mindset and values. A process that feels restrictive, fear-driven, or misaligned will resist adoption and sustainability. Ensure that structures resonate with purpose, evoke clarity, and reduce stress rather than amplify it. Emotional resonance strengthens adherence and reinforces autonomy. Technology is a tool, not a master. Applications, platforms, and digital tracking can support budgeting, investment, and planning, but reliance must remain conscious. Use technology to enhance systems, automate processes, and monitor progress, but avoid allowing it to dictate decision-making. Systems of sovereignty depend on intentional use, not passive dependency. Contingency planning is essential. Unexpected events, expenses, economic shifts, or personal crises can disrupt even well-designed systems. Plan for volatility by establishing buffers, emergency funds, and adaptable strategies. Anticipation reduces reactive behavior, preserves clarity, and protects both financial and emotional stability. Sovereignty is maintained not by control over unpredictability, but by readiness to respond with intention. Integration with personal growth magnifies impact. Systems are most empowering when they reinforce long-term development, emotional resilience, and aligned decision-making. Allocate time, energy, and resources toward learning, reflection, and skill building. A well-designed system creates capacity for growth, ensuring that autonomy is sustained across life's dimensions, not just finances. Delegation can strengthen sovereignty. Identify areas where expert input or external management enhances efficiency or reduces emotional burden. Delegating responsibilities strategically allows focus on higher priority decisions, strengthens outcomes, and preserves mental and emotional energy. Effective delegation is not relinquishment of control, but amplification of intentional influence. Ultimately, systems of sovereignty are scaffolds for freedom. They transform intention into action, reduce reactive behavior, and create a reliable framework for managing complexity. They allow resources, financial, emotional, and temporal, to be directed toward purpose rather than dispersed in chaos. Systems preserve autonomy, enhance clarity, and empower deliberate living. As this chapter closes, reflect on the structures that currently shape your life. Identify gaps, inefficiencies, and areas of potential improvement. Consider where automation, boundaries, decision frameworks, and reflection can enhance clarity and control. Commit to building and maintaining systems that support autonomy, purpose, and freedom, ensuring that your choices are deliberate, empowered, and aligned with your highest intentions. Sovereignty is not achieved through chance or discipline alone. It is constructed through deliberate systems, consistent practice, and conscious alignment. When structures support freedom rather than constrain it, autonomy becomes sustainable, decision-making becomes intentional, and life unfolds according to purpose rather than reaction. Chapter 11. Shadows Integrated, embracing all aspects of your financial self. True mastery over money is not achieved by denying discomfort, ignoring fear, or pretending control exists where it does not. It emerges from integration, the conscious acknowledgement and acceptance of all facets of your financial self. Shadows exist in every relationship with money: doubt, insecurity, impulsiveness, envy, shame, or over-attachment. Integration does not mean indulgence. It means recognition, understanding, and the deliberate transformation of these patterns into clarity, intention, and strength. Begin by observing your shadow behaviors without judgment. Notice moments of impulse, anxiety, or avoidance. Where do you overcompensate, hoard, or seek validation through wealth? These tendencies are not moral failings. They are signals, reflections of unmet needs, fears, or unexamined beliefs. Awareness is the first step toward transformation. By bringing these shadows into the light, you reclaim autonomy over their influence. Self-reflection is essential. Explore the origins of shadow behaviors. Early experiences, cultural conditioning, or past setbacks often sow the seeds of limiting patterns. Perhaps scarcity messages or fear-driven habits shaped your approach. Perhaps secrecy, guilt, or comparison created attachments that now subtly dictate choices. Understanding origin transforms judgment into insight, revealing why behaviors persist and where conscious intervention is required. Integration involves naming and accepting these patterns. Resistance amplifies their power, while acknowledgement allows observation, analysis, and choice. Recognize that fear, envy, or obsession is not your identity. They are responses, signals, and opportunities. By accepting their presence, you remove the unconscious control they exert over your financial life. Shadows become guides, not jailers. Emotional awareness is central. Observe the feelings that accompany each financial decision. tension before a purchase, relief after saving, guilt following indulgence. These emotions reveal hidden motives, unacknowledged fears, and desires influencing behavior. By consciously connecting emotion with action, you regain clarity and control, transforming reactive impulses into deliberate choice. Patterns of avoidance often accompany shadow behavior. Fear of loss, embarrassment, or inadequacy can cause procrastination, indecision, or withdrawal. Recognize these tendencies and explore their triggers. Shadow integration does not eliminate fear, but teaches how to navigate it consciously. Awareness transforms avoidance into engagement, paralysis into strategy, and anxiety into insight. Shadow behaviors are also tied to attachment. Money often becomes a proxy for security, power, or validation. Integration requires differentiating between authentic needs and conditioned attachments. Reflect on what is truly essential versus what is symbolic or performative. This clarity reduces the influence of unconscious desire and frees decision-making from emotional compulsion. Deliberate action is a tool for transformation. Once patterns are identified and acknowledged, choose responses aligned with purpose rather than habit. Small, consistent acts, restructuring spending, redirecting savings, or adjusting priorities, retrain behavior and reinforce conscious autonomy. Action solidifies insight, bridging understanding with practical manifestation. Boundaries are critical in shadow work. They protect against external influence, overextension, and emotional reactivity. Establish clear parameters for spending, risk-taking, and engagement with financial obligations. Boundaries create a framework within which shadows can be observed, processed, and transformed without dominating decision-making. Reflection and journaling are powerful aids. Document emotional responses, impulses, and decision patterns. Explore how these moments intersect with values, purpose, and long-term goals. Writing externalizes thought, clarifies emotion, and provides perspective. Over time, patterns and progress become visible, reinforcing both awareness and integration. Integration also involves forgiveness and compassion. Past mistakes, missteps, or financial failures are not evidence of inadequacy. They are opportunities for learning. Acknowledge errors without self-criticism, extract lessons, and incorporate insight into future choices. Compassion softens resistance, allowing shadows to inform rather than inhibit growth. Mentorship and accountability accelerate integration. Sharing insights, challenges, and strategies with trusted individuals provides perspective, reinforces alignment, and prevents isolation. Guidance helps identify blind spots, strengthens consistency, and maintains emotional balance in the face of complexity or uncertainty. Shadow integration amplifies autonomy. Awareness, acknowledgement, and deliberate action diminish the influence of unconscious impulses. Decisions emerge from clarity, intention, and alignment with purpose. Emotional turbulence, fear-driven behaviors, and reactive patterns are transformed into data, insight, and strategy. Power over money becomes conscious rather than assumed. Integration is holistic. It encompasses both abundance and scarcity mindsets, ambition and restraint, indulgence and discipline. By reconciling conflicting tendencies, you create a coherent framework in which wealth serves purpose and values. Shadows are not eliminated. They are understood, harnessed, and incorporated into conscious choice. Perspective strengthens integration. Recognize that shadow behaviors often signal areas of growth rather than failure. Impulse may indicate desire, anxiety may indicate attachment, secrecy may indicate a need for privacy or control. Observing these signals objectively allows transformation from constraint into opportunity. The lens of perspective reframes shadows as teachers rather than obstacles. Consistency reinforces transformation. Integration is not a one-time act. It is an ongoing process. Regular reflection, deliberate action, and emotional awareness create momentum, strengthen autonomy, and embed conscious choice into everyday life. Over time, patterns of control, fear, and compulsion diminish, replaced by clarity, intention, and balanced decision-making. Integration also enables flexibility. Life presents unexpected challenges, opportunities, and shifts in priorities. A fully integrated approach allows adaptation without compromising clarity or values. Decisions remain deliberate even under pressure, guided by purpose rather than reactivity. Sovereignty over finances becomes resilient and sustainable. Connection to purpose amplifies impact. Decisions informed by integrated awareness extend beyond personal gain. They influence relationships, work, contribution, and personal growth. Shadows, once acknowledged, guide insight into motivations and behavior, allowing alignment between resources, intention, and life vision. Financial mastery becomes inseparable from holistic personal mastery. As this chapter closes, consider the shadows in your own financial life. Observe impulses, fears, attachments, and unexamined patterns. Acknowledge their presence and trace their origins. Then consciously choose how to respond, what to integrate, redirect, or transform. Through awareness, reflection, action, and emotional alignment, you reclaim authority, cultivate clarity, and create a coherent, empowered relationship with money. The power of integration lies in choice. Shadows no longer control behavior, they illuminate insight. Emotions no longer dictate decisions, they guide understanding. Awareness transforms limitation into opportunity, fear into strategy, and compulsion into deliberate action. By embracing all aspects of your financial self, you step fully into autonomy, mastery, and freedom. Chapter 12. Sovereign Wealth. Living with mastery, clarity, and freedom. Sovereign wealth is not measured solely by numbers in an account, investments accumulated, or the visible trappings of financial success. True sovereignty is the state of mastery over choices, impulses, fears, and desires, so that wealth serves life, purpose, and freedom rather than the reverse. It is the culmination of awareness, intentionality, emotional integration, and deliberate systems. In this state, money is a tool, a resource, and a reflection of deliberate living. It no longer dominates decisions, dictates behavior, or amplifies anxiety. The foundation of sovereign wealth is self-mastery. You have observed your patterns, fears, and impulses. You have acknowledged shadows and transformed emotional responses into clarity. You have rewritten narratives that limited autonomy, established systems that support freedom, and aligned resources with purpose. Self-mastery allows choices to emerge from reasoned intention rather than reaction, ensuring that every decision reflects deliberate thought, values, and long-term vision. Clarity is central to sovereignty. Financial decisions, spending, saving, investing, and giving, are no longer scattered, impulsive, or reactive. They are coherent, consistent, and purposeful. Clarity comes from understanding priorities, defining values, and maintaining alignment between resources and goals. When you act from this clarity, money becomes predictable and manageable, enabling you to focus energy on creativity, growth, and contribution rather than stress, fear, or indecision. Autonomy is reinforced through systems. Structures designed for efficiency, boundaries, and accountability preserve freedom even under pressure. Automated processes, decision frameworks, and regular reflection ensure that financial activity flows seamlessly with intention. Autonomy is not about chaos or limitless choice. It is the presence of deliberate pathways that allow resources to serve purpose without constant vigilance. Purpose transforms wealth into a force for growth. Money becomes a tool to enhance life, relationships, work, and personal evolution. It enables education, skill development, health, and experiences aligned with values. Investment becomes more than financial return. It is strategic deployment of resources to support long-term objectives. Giving becomes intentional and impactful, reflecting alignment with values and amplifying influence beyond personal gain. Sovereign wealth is wealth with meaning. Emotional equilibrium is essential. In sovereignty, Financial decisions are guided neither by fear, scarcity, nor compulsion. Emotional awareness and regulation allow responses to uncertainty, market fluctuations, or unexpected challenges without panic. Emotions are acknowledged, analyzed, and integrated into deliberate decision-making. Sovereign wealth is emotionally resilient. It adapts without surrendering intentionality. Integration completes the journey. All aspects of financial self, light and shadow, aspiration and anxiety, discipline and desire, are harmonized. Past mistakes are reframed as lessons, impulses as guides, and fears as data. Integration allows coherence between mindset, behavior, and intention. Decisions flow naturally from awareness, values, and purpose, creating a seamless connection between life and resources. Flexibility sustains sovereignty. Life is unpredictable, and challenges inevitably arise. Sovereign wealth accommodates change, allowing systems, priorities, and strategies to adapt without compromising clarity or values. Contingency planning, emergency buffers, and adaptive frameworks maintain stability while providing freedom to respond intentionally to evolving circumstances. Flexibility ensures that sovereignty is resilient rather than fragile. Perspective amplifies mastery. Financial success is evaluated not solely in numbers but in alignment with life vision, emotional balance, and impact. Wealth becomes a measure of strategy, discipline, and intention rather than status or comparison. Perspective allows contentment without complacency, growth without obsession, and contribution without expectation. Sovereignty is measured by coherence, not accumulation. Generosity embodies the highest expression of sovereignty. Resources are deployed deliberately to support causes, people, and experiences that reflect purpose. Giving is conscious and aligned with values, magnifying the transformative potential of wealth. Contribution becomes a natural extension of autonomy, reinforcing identity, purpose, and impact. In sovereign wealth, generosity flows without sacrifice, obligation, or compulsion. Reflection maintains alignment. Regular evaluation of behavior, priorities, and systems ensures that wealth remains a tool rather than a master. Observation of decisions, outcomes, and emotional responses identifies areas for adjustment and growth. Reflection solidifies integration, reinforces clarity, and preserves autonomy over time. The sovereign relationship with money is continuously nurtured through conscious practice. Confidence emerges naturally. When mastery, clarity, systems, purpose, emotional regulation, and integration are in place, financial decisions are made with calm assurance. Uncertainty becomes navigable rather than overwhelming, and choices reflect deliberate intention rather than reaction. Confidence is a byproduct of consistent practice, self-awareness, and alignment with values. It is both stabilizing and liberating. Legacy becomes intentional. Sovereign wealth is not only about the present, but also about the impact left behind. Resources are deployed in ways that support personal, familial, or societal growth. Investments, contributions, and decisions are made with foresight and intentionality, ensuring that autonomy, purpose, and clarity extend beyond immediate circumstances. Sovereignty considers both current freedom and enduring influence. Empowerment is the culmination. Money no longer dictates fear, desire, or secrecy. It serves as a tool, reflecting mastery over self, emotions, and systems. Each choice is intentional, each decision aligned with values and long-term goals. Empowerment is experienced in daily actions, strategic investments, and deliberate contributions, creating a life of balance, clarity, and purposeful freedom. Sovereign wealth is both practical and psychological. It encompasses tangible resources, structured systems, and strategic decisions, as well as emotional intelligence, self-awareness, and alignment with values. Mastery is holistic. Clarity integrates action with intention, freedom with responsibility, and ambition with ethical alignment. Wealth becomes a mirror of deliberate living, not a driver of fear or insecurity. The final step is living consistently in sovereignty. Decisions are evaluated through the lens of mastery, clarity, and purpose. Emotional responses are observed, systems are maintained, and actions are aligned with vision. Freedom is sustained through vigilance, reflection, and integration. Sovereignty is not temporary. It is a lived, practiced, and conscious state that guides financial and life choices alike. As this chapter closes, reflect on your journey. Observe how far awareness, integration, intentionality, and alignment have carried you. Consider how wealth can now serve freedom, purpose, and growth rather than fear or compulsion. Commit to maintaining systems, practicing emotional mastery, and aligning every financial decision with values and long-term vision. Sovereign wealth is not merely accumulation. It is the lived experience of clarity, empowerment, and deliberate choice. When money becomes a servant rather than a master, life unfolds with intentionality. Every choice, every investment, and every act of generosity reflects purpose, autonomy, and mastery. Sovereignty is sustained not by luck or chance but by conscious practice, disciplined systems, and integrated awareness. In this state, wealth is more than a number. It is the embodiment of deliberate living, freedom, and the capacity to shape life on your own terms.